Hey folks, just a little homestead update, and I'm going to finish this video with a little homestead cooking. But we got a little bit of snow, a little bit of melt off, got more coming this afternoon. Nothing really. It's the slow time of the year. But we'll catch y'all in a bit with some cooking. Hey folks, this morning I'm making some restaurant style teriyaki sauce. I'm doing a double batch, so you can cut it in half. We use it a lot, especially in the winter, stir fries and whatnot. But what I've got is a half a cup of soy sauce. In this, I've got 2 cups of water, well, 1.5 cups of water, 2 teaspoons, or a teaspoon of ground ginger, 2 teaspoons of garlic powder, 10 tablespoons of packed brown sugar, and 4 tablespoons of honey. And we're going to mix that all together. Get all the goodies out. And we're going to heat this up a bit. And we're going to just let it warm up a little bit, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so I've got that heated up just a little bit, and what I'm going to add is well, it's 4 tablespoons of cornstarch mixed in with a half cup of water. We're going to pour that in. And then we're going to start whisking. And you want to cook this to the thickness you want. You want to whisk it so that it doesn't stick to the bottom of the pan. And we'll be back when it's ready. Okay, so you want to keep whisking this so it doesn't stick to the bottom or sides. And when it's to the desired thickness, which it is for me, you want to take it off the heat and let it cool down a bit. If you get it too thick, you can always add water, but that's your basic teriyaki sauce.
And it's mighty tasty.
And it is good. Later.
Hello, welcome to the Homestead Cooking. I'm making some turtles today. They're caramel and pecans dipped in chocolate. So in my top of my double boiler, I have caramels. The little square, if you can see them, they're little like the craft caramels. You can use any kind. So I've got my water up to simmering. The recipe calls for a 14-ounce bag of caramels, which used to be about 40 to 45 caramels. Now the bags are only 11 ounces, and of course they're even more expensive than the 14-ounce bags. But anyway, so the best is to have around 40 caramels. I think the bags now only have like 30 or 32, but that'll work. And in there I have 2 tablespoons of half and half. You can use regular milk, you can use heavy cream, and I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of butter. And we're just going to let that simmer in the double boiler until the caramels heat and they're smooth. I've got pecan halves. I'm going to chop them up. You want 2 cups of chopped pecans. How chopped you want them is up to you. You could leave them whole if you wanted to, but it's much easier if you chop them up at least roughly. So we'll chop those up, and once the caramels ready, we'll mix the pecans in. We'll drop them on some parchment paper on my cookie sheet. You want to let them cool a little bit, and then we'll melt some chocolate to dip them in. Let me get my butter. I want 2 tablespoons of butter to add to this. So it'll take a while for your caramels to melt, and you need to stir them. You don't have to stir them constantly, but every once in a while you want to, and it helps them to smooth out. We're almost completely smooth here. I'm chopping my pecans. You don't want them too fine. You still want there to be some good size pieces in there. As I said, you need 2 cups. And you can substitute walnuts. I have, and they are every bit as good in these. You really don't even notice much of a difference from the pecans. We'll just finish chopping. These make excellent gifts. They will keep for a while at room temperature. You just need to maybe put them in a nice little gift tin with some paper in there. People love them. They're very tasty. They certainly beat anything you buy in the store, and there's nothing like a homemade gift. I would rather receive something, and not just food, anything homemade, than a store-bought gift any day. But candies and jams, and I'm going to be making some fudge in the next few days, and we'll videotape that. You can also make your own caramel. I have not done that. I've been wanting to, and that'll be on my list to do soon. And that certainly would be awesome to use in these. We're almost there. So my caramel is smooth, fully melted. I'm going to add in my 2 cups of a rough chopped pecans, stir them in. And it's going to be stiff. Because you're just basically coating the pecans. There's not going to be a lot of caramel left over. And now we're going to drop this onto a parchment lined cookie sheet. You can make these as big or as small as you want, and we'll let them cool up a little bit, and then we'll worry about dipping them. So here's my cookie sheet, and I found the easiest way is to use 2 spoons, a teaspoon and a tablespoon scoop more or less. And as I said, you can make these as big or as small as you want. That one's rather large, so I'll probably make some a little bit smaller. And keep stirring your mixture up, because some of the caramel will settle to the bottom. And if you want them a little bigger, you can add a little more to them. And just kind of flatten them down a little bit. just keep scooping them out. And I can't remember exactly how many I get out of this. We'll know once I'm done here. So we'll keep scooping.
Suddenly, I'm afraid. This is my first assignment on my own. I am too. Don't worry, we have our two with us. I do hope he doesn't try anything foolish.
I'd be more concerned about her doing something than him.
It's not on, so.
Oh, okay. How'd the tin get all the way out here?
Otis was licking it.
Oh.
That's probably.
I'll be right with you.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Hey, you old buddy. Oh, my friend. What?
Good boy. You continue with this.
So I've got them dropped out, and I've gotten about 17, so I'd say about a dozen and a half. It depends on how big you make them. You want to let these cool a little bit so that you can, once you can peel them up, you can kind of shape them better into a more perfect round if you want, or you can just leave them like they are. They are homemade, so they don't have to be perfect. And you want to let these cool. I'll probably pop them in the fridge for a few minutes. There's an air pecan. Let these cool. Once they're set up, we'll melt some chocolate. Now, what you use for melting chocolate is up to you. I have melted regular chocolate and chopped it up and melted it. And I've used the dipping chocolate blocks, and that's probably what I'll use for these. That has a decent flavor to it, so we can use that. But again, as I said, once they cool, I'll kind of shape them a little more uniform here and go from there. But they're pretty sticky at the moment, so we'll let these set and then we'll dip. So while I've got the turtles actually in the freezer for a few minutes, I've got my chocolate melting, and these are the blocks that I'm using. It's almond bark coating is what I'm using, and that's got a pretty good flavor. And I've got half the package in there. It's a 2 pound or a 1.5 pound package, and I've got about half of it in there. We won't know for sure how much I need. You can use chocolate chips and melt them up. I have found that they tend to be sticky, the chocolate, when it's sitting, and you have to keep it refrigerated. You can buy regular chocolate melting wafers. Those are good. Or I like this. It works pretty well. It's got a decent flavor, and so I've got that just. And the truffles will take about 10 minutes to set up in the freezer. Or the turtles, excuse me, not truffles. Although truffles sound good. So when the turtles are set up enough in the freezer, they should only be a little bit sticky. You should be able to handle them. You don't want them solid. And I just take and shape them a little bit so they're a little bit more round. You don't have to do that. I just think they make a little bit better presentation, especially if you're giving them away. But hey, it's homemade. And if it's still too sticky to handle, you can put them back in the freezer for a couple more minutes. But I'll finish rounding these up a little bit and just evening up the shape a little bit. And I just kind of even out the shape a little bit. So sometimes when I melt the chocolate, it's too thick, really, for dipping, so I'll add a little bit of shortening, and usually I add about a teaspoon at a time till I get it to what I call dipping consistency, and that's pretty good. You want it to run off your spoon, but you don't want it so thin that it won't stay on the... And one thing about the turtles being cold is that the coating will really adhere quickly and set up. So what I do is I just take one and I drop it in. I don't know how well you can see this. I just spoon the chocolate over it. And I usually use a fork, a 2-timed fork. Like a meat fork works great for this, but this regular fork will work. And just shake off all the excess. Put it on your sheet and move on to the next. And we'll just keep going until they're all dipped. Now once you've got them all dipped, you can just set them aside to cool and set up, or you can pop them in the fridge for a few minutes. You don't want to keep these in the fridge because the caramel will be too hard to chew. Also, if you want, once they're totally set up, you can re-dip them if you want a thicker coating of chocolate, but unless your coating is very thin, this is usually more than enough. And there we have turtles.